Sarachandra Buddha Center.
Ah, Sarachandra Buddha Center. So, very nice. I think you were in a few of our discussions before, right?
Yeah.
Not yet, Bhante.
This is the first time.
Somewhere else, I think.
Bhante Pevarathana, welcome. All right, so let us begin our bi-weekly sutra discussion by paying respect and homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I pay my respect and homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened Buddha. Dear venerable friends, dear friends in Dhamma, and our friends who are watching us on Facebook and YouTube Live, I would like to welcome all of you to our bi-weekly sutra discussion with the venerable monks and nuns from different cities in North America. So today we have Venerable Bhante Pevarathana joining us from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And then we have Bhante Kamalasri joining us from Minnesota. And we have Bhante Vangsananda joining us from Seattle. And we have Bhante Jinananda joining us from Ottawa, Canada. And we have Bhante Sumana joining us from Ottawa, Canada. Then we have Bhante Kusala joining us from here, Toronto. We are in the same place. I'm in the shrine room and he's in his own room. And we have Mataji, Sister Kema. So wonderful to see you after a couple of weeks. I was wondering what happened to you. You were missing in action. And we have a new face today, Bhante Sanata Vihari. I think he's a Hollywood monk from joining us from North Hollywood. From the Sarachandra Buddhist Meditation Center. So I would like to respectfully welcome all of you to our bi-weekly sutra discussion. And I also would like to welcome all our friends who are watching us at this moment on Facebook and YouTube Live. So I have a very kind request to all of you. If possible, please share this discussion, this program in your social media timelines for the great benefit of your friends, your family members, and for others. And I think the more we share, the greater it is, the better it is. Because Dhamma is the medicine for us. And you never know, one person might benefit from today's discussion and maybe more. So what we are going to discuss today is very interesting topic. And by the way, today, Bhante Kamalasri, we also have another discussion right after this. It's called Dhamma or Dharma. It's starting at 7:30. It's organized by Bhante Kamalasuri and Bhante Dhammaloka and other monks. And those friends who are watching us, if you're not exhausted, you could join that discussion too. And we have a Tibetan monk and also a monk in Theravada tradition, Yoga Rahula. And actually he replied to my email saying he is already committed to another discussion. So he cannot make it to our discussion, but it's fine. But you know, rather than doing something else, it's always good to listen to Dhamma. So today, we are going to discuss about Jataka story from the Jataka Pali. The Jataka story number 447. It is called the Dhammapāla Jataka. And this Jataka story is very interesting. I think venerable monks and nuns, you have already read this story. I'm very positive you have told this story to the kids and to the people. And you know, the teachings we find in this Jataka story is very relevant to us. I personally think it's very good for us to understand the true value of this particular lineage of family line or dynasty called Dhammapāla. And the teachings we have. But I'm not going to tell you this story. I would like to invite Bhante Kusala to tell us that story. And then later on, we monks and nuns could discuss about the teachings and how those teachings are so relevant to us today. Oh, is it just a myth? Or is this a true story? So let's discuss. Bhante Kusala.
Thank you, Bhante. Namami Sangham. So this conversation about nobody dying young is an interesting story in Dhammapāla Jataka. Now we need to keep in mind here that, you know, there must be parents whose young children died and they are listening to this conversation and they might be wondering, you know, why my son died, why my daughter died. Was it because they were not virtuous in this life or in the past life? So they may have these questions, and you are welcome to bring these questions to the conversation. And also keep in mind that we are, especially Bhante Sarnapal is asking this open-ended question, whether this is a myth or whether this is something, an actual something. So let me get into the story in question. This is Dhammapāla, one of the princes, one of the young men lived at a certain time in a past life of a Buddha. He was born to a Dhammapāla family in a village named Kāsi during the king Brahmadatta's time. And he was sent to a famous teacher for studies. And when he was studying at this teacher's place, one of the students, one of the sons, actually, the eldest son of the teacher happened to pass away. And everyone started crying except the prince, except this one student, Dhammapāla, who was very clever, who was good at everything. And the teacher was intrigued and asked, you know, why did you not cry? And everybody showed their grief. This young man said, you know, nobody dies young, and I never believed that anybody could die this young. So I'm not crying. I don't believe it. And then the teacher started, you know, asking questions about this belief and why it started and how it came to this man's mind. And he said, you know, my father believes that in the past 7 generations in our families, nobody has ever died young, and because of these certain virtues. So this is a response the teacher got, and then the teacher decided to really like assign this student the whole school. Big responsibility. He was assigned the school, and the teacher took a companion and also took some bones of a goat, put them in a bag, and went to the father of this young man. A couple of days later, he reached to the village, and finally somebody guided them to the actual house of this man, and he was greeted by the father and offered great treatments, looked after by giving a meal and giving every nice treatment. And the teacher then said, I'm sorry to break this news to you, but your son is no more. He died. And the father immediately started, laughing at this, and clapping. The whole servants also started laughing and clapping. And at that point, the teacher really asked, why is this response? You should be in pain. You should be grieving. And then the father said, nobody dies young in our families. And the teacher then asked, what's the reason for this? The reason being, we are virtuous, our servants are virtuous, we practice Dhamma, we listen to Dhamma, we keep 10 meritorious, we participate in 10 meritorious deeds, Dasa Punya Kriya. And when we give happily, we think about giving happily, and we reflect about it later happily. So how did this story came up in Buddhist tradition is when the Buddha visited the King Suddhodana, his father, and the Buddha was treated, Buddha and 20,000 monks were treated by the King Suddhodana. And at that visit, the Buddha asked, when I did my extreme practices, self-mortification, I'm sure you got the news from the Deva, the deities, that your son passed away without reaching his goal of Buddhahood. And the Buddha asked, did you believe this? The father, Suddhodana, the king said, no. They did tell me, but I never believed them. And why is that? So it's because he never wanted to believe something like that, and he had past life traits of not believing such things. And the Buddha brought up the Dhammapāla-Jataka. It's not only in this lifetime that you didn't believe that your son would not die young, it's also in this previous birth, such as the Dhammapāla-Jataka story, that when you were told that your son died young, you never believed them. Even that teacher who is trustworthy came all the way from a different village and reported that your son died, but you never believed it. And that teacher eventually, said, your son is doing great, he's keeping well. I just came here all the way to test, test what he was saying, that nobody dies and nobody dies young in your families. Now also, because the teacher's son died, I think the teacher also must have been going through some grief and processing it, and he approached this family to know really, if there is anything he was missing in his teaching or anything missing in his virtuous conduct. And perhaps he learned that, the way we conduct ourselves contribute to long life, longevity. And there is a quote, and I will conclude with that, the goal of life is to die as young as possible, as late as possible in life, which actually suggests that looking young when you die. But here, in this story, it's about people not dying young at all. So they don't die young, they live the full lifespan. And the reason for their longevity is the cause behind that is their good conduct. So that is briefly how I can present the story to our audience. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante Kusala. You have beautifully told the story to us and to our audience. And I think even people later on can read that story if they are interested in getting into this real, or if they really want to do some research into the life expectancy or longevity. There are a few other Jataka stories too. But I know we have English translation of this Jataka story from the Pali, and I kind of heard Mataji, you retranslated those teachings, the verses, and the way the people could easily understand. Would you mind presenting your new translation of those verses? I think then we can get into the discussion. Yeah, you have to unmute yourself. Unmute yourself first.
Yeah, I think the most important thing about working with the Jataka tales is turning it into an Aesop's fable system. Yeah. A lot of times the Jataka books are written or translated, but nobody sets up the actual fable for you to remember. You see what I'm saying? Aesop's fables was the Greek version of the Jataka tales, or vice versa, and so the one friend of mine in Sri Lanka, she's been working for years to do this really elegant version of the Jataka tales. And having people have it as a family thing to read, but it's always has the lesson in the front, like he was explaining. But I can do this for you if you want me to. I'll go through.
I think that would be nice.
So you let me know what you think. And I want to say this, I'm not a translator. I'm a turnaround person with English that's been turned around from the 1800s and 1700s, because I study my family's genealogy, and we always have to turn it around and have a discussion about what was really said, letters and documents and everything. So this is why I did this, but it came out pretty well. It says, what custom is it? The master has told us that this is a story about the king Suddhodana, his father's refusal to believe his son was dead. And the story came to the Buddha after his first visit back to Kapilapura, while he was lodged in his father's banyan grove, and it was the very spot his father in another time refused to believe this same story. And during a previous life, it was of the Buddha. And at the time, they say that the great king Suddhodana, having given a meal of rice and gruel at his own dwelling to the Buddha, at the head of 20,000 brethren, during the meal, he talked pleasantly to him and saying, Sir, at the time of your striving, did I get that right? Right. Some deities came to me and poised in the air. They said, your son, Prince Siddhartha, he has died of starvation. And the master replied, did you believe it, great king? Sir, I did not believe it. Even when the deities came hovering in the air and telling me this, I refused to believe it, saying that there was no death for my son until he had obtained Buddhahood at the foot of the Bo tree. And the master then said, great king, so long ago, in the time of the great Dhammapāla, a world-famed teacher had once come here and said, your son is dead. And this these are his bones. And at that time too, you refused to believe this also. And you said to that teacher, in our family, they never die young. And so then why should you believe now? And then at his father's request, the master told us a tale of long ago. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was king of Benares, there was in the kingdom of Kāsi a village named Dhammapāla, and it took that name because of one family named Dhammapāla who dwelt there. And for all his time, this Brahmin had kept the 10 paths of virtue. And where he dwelt and lived, he was called Dhammapāla, or the Lawkeeper. And within his household, even the servitors, they gave alms, observed virtue, kept the holy days. At that time, the Bodhisatta came to life in that household, and to him they gave the name Dhammapāla-Kumāra, Dhammapāla the Younger, or the Lawkeeper. And very soon, as he came of age, his father gave him 1,000 pieces, and he sent him to study in Takkasilā. He went there and he studied with the world-famed teacher, and he became the chief pupil in the company of 500 youths. And just then, the eldest son of his teacher died, surrounded by his pupils. And in the midst of his kith and kin, they were all weeping. And he spoke of his lad's deeds in life one last time at the cemetery. And then, as the teacher stood with the company of kinsfolk, and all his pupils were weeping and wailing, he noticed that Dhammapāla never wept or wailed. And afterwards, when the 500 youths had returned from the cemetery, they all sat down in the teacher's presence, and they said, "Ah, such a fine lad, so good and tender a child to be cut off in such a young age and parted from father and mother." Dhammapāla replied, "Tender indeed, as you say. Well, why did he die at a tender age? 'Tis not right that children of a tender age should die." And then they said to him, "But why, sir? Do you not understand and realize that such a person as a child is but a mortal?" I know it, but in tender years they do not die. People die when they have grown old. Well, then aren't all the component things transitory and unreal? Impermanent they are. This is true, but in the days of youth, most creatures do not die. It is only when they have grown old that they die. Oh, is that the custom of your family? Yes, that is the custom in my family. And the lads took this conversation to their teacher, and he sent for Dhammapāla and asked him, "Is it true, Dhammapāla, my son, that it is in your family people do not die young?" "Yes, teacher," said he, "it is true." Well, on hearing this, the teacher thought, "This is a most marvelous thing," he says. I will make a journey to his father. I will ask him about it and see if it is true. I will live according to his rules, if it is true. And so when he had finished all that should be done for his son, after a time of 7 or 8 days, he then sent for Dhammapāla, and he said to him, "My son, I am going away from home, and while I am away, you are to instruct my pupils." And so saying that, he then procured the bones of a wild goat. He washed them, he scented them, he put them into a bag. He then took with him a little page boy as he left Takkasilā. In due course of time, once he arrived at that village, he inquired the way to Dhammapāla's house, and he stopped at the door. Now the first servant of the Brahmin, whomever he was, he saw him coming, and he took the sunshade from his hand. He took his shoes, and he took the bag from his servant. And the teacher bade them tell the lad's father, please, that here was the teacher of his son Dhammapāla the Younger standing at the door. Very good, sir, said the servant, and he summoned the father to him. He quickly came to the threshold and he said, come in, and leading the way into his house, he seated the visitor upon a couch, and he did his host's duty by washing his feet and preparing his seat properly and a table and so forth. And when the teacher had eaten food, they sat down for a kindly talk together. Said the teacher, he said, Brahmin, your son, young Dhammapāla, while full of wisdom and a perfect master of the 3 Vedas and the 18 accomplishments, by any unhappy chance, I'm sorry to say he lost his life. All component things are transitory. Grieve not for him, sir. But the Brahmin sat back and clapped his hands, and he laughed out loudly. Why do you laugh, Brahmin? Said the other. Why, because he said, it is not my son who is dead. It must be some other. No, Brahmin, was the answer. Your son is dead and no other. Please look on his bones and believe. And so saying, he unwrapped the bones. But these are your son's bones, he said to the Brahmin. A wild goat's bones, perhaps, said the father, or perhaps a dog's, but my son is not dead. In our family, for 7 generations, no such thing has ever been happening as death in tender years. And you were speaking of a falsehood. And then they all clapped their hands in the house and laughed aloud. The teacher, when he beheld this wonderful thing, was much pleased, and he said, Brahmin, this custom in your family, well, in the family line, it cannot be without a cause that those young do not die. Why then is it that you do not die when you are young? And he asked his question by repeating, he answered the question by repeating the first stanza. He asks it again. What custom is it? Or what holy way? By what good deed is this the fruit, I pray? Tell me, O Brahmin, what the reason is. Why is your line? In the young, they never die. Please say. And then the Brahmin explained these virtues, had such result that in his family, no one died young, and he explained it well. He repeated the following stanzas. We walk in uprightness, we speak no lies. All foul and wicked sins are kept far away from us. We do deny all things that are evil, and therefore in youth, not any one among us dies. We hear the deeds of the foolish and the wise, and what the foolish do not heed, we firmly do. The wise we follow, and the fools we forsake, and therefore in youth not one among us dies. In gifts beforehand our contentment lies, and even while giving we are well content. And having given, we do not repent. Therefore, in youth, not one among us dies. Priests and Brahmins, wayfarers, we satisfy, beggars and mendicants, and all who have need, we give them drink, and hungry folk we feed. And therefore, the young among us do not die. Wedded to others' wives, we do not sigh when this happens, but we are faithful to the marriage vows, and faithful are our wives, and therefore the young among us do not die. And the children that spring from these true wives are wise abundantly, and they are bred to good hearing and good learning, versed in the Vedas and all perfected. And therefore, none of us die while being young. Each one tries to do right for the sake of heaven. And so lives the father, so lives the mother, so the son, the daughter, the sister, and the brother. Therefore, not one of us in our youth will die. For the sake of heaven, our servants do apply their lives to goodness, men and maidens with no sighs. Retainers, servitors, each meanest thrall who works here beside us. Therefore, the young among us do not die. And by the last two stanzas, he declared, the goodness of those who walk in righteousness saves him when in this way he is bent on behaving thus. Righteousness practiced well brings happiness to them that do righteously and are blessed by this boon. The righteous do not come into punishment and swoon. Righteousness as a shade saves the righteous, saves in the time of rain. Thus the lad still lives, and goodness to Dhammapāla this safety gives to him. Some others' bones are these, my friend, that you have conveyed. But on hearing this, the teacher replied, a happy journey is this journey of mine. It is fruitful, it is not without fruit. And then full of happiness, he begged the pardon of Dhammapāla's father. And he added to him, I came hither and I brought with me these wild goat's bones on purpose to try to fool you, but your son is safe. Well, I pray you, please impart to me your rules for preserving life. And then Dhammapāla's father, he wrote the rules that he had said upon a leaf. And after tarrying in that place for some few days, the teacher returned to Takkasilā, and having instructed Dhammapāla in all the branches of skills and learning, he dismissed him with a great troop of followers. Now, when the master had thus discoursed to the great king Suddhodana, he declared the truths and identified the birth, not at the conclusion of the truths of the king, became established in the fruit of the third path. And at that time, the mother and the father were the Maharaja's kin, and the teacher was Sariputta. The retinue was the Buddha's retinue, and I myself was the younger Dhammapāla. So all has been made clear. So that's how we did that.
Wow, you have beautifully retranslated that story.
We untwisted it is all we did. You know, everything that Kristen said is there. We just untwisted it. And when you go to the text, there's a lovely tiny little book. You know, I like tiny books. And sometimes there are these little books, you know, that people do for Buddhism. And there was a lady in Kuala Lumpur. It's a Malaysian Chinese family, you know, and the family, when she grew up and everything, that's the way they lived. And they had a really nice life. They all did well. I don't know if anyone young died, but she wrote this book, If You Want to Get to Heaven, Be Good. Be good.
Now my question is like, and of course, I think it is a typical human feeling, nature, or desire, even craving. Nobody wants to die young. Everybody wants to live long. I think, as we say, like some reflections, as human beings, it's called Jivitakama. We desire to live. Amaritakama, we don't desire to die. So we want to live long. Now, here in this Jataka story, we find maybe it's a story, maybe it's a legend or a myth, whatever you call it. Okay, so in this particular lineage, in this particular family line, or let's say even here in Canada, we say the famous names would be the Trudeaus or Trudeau family, or the or in the United States, or the Clinton family, or the Obama family, or the Bush family, or you name it. So in that kind of, so this is that kind of family, Dhammapāla family. In that family, they were pretty sure nobody could die young, and they never believed people dying young. So why? Because of these customs they followed, or maybe those are the moral, the spiritual, social, economical values they had, and then they lived pretty a long life. Let's say in Canada, I think the life expectancy is pretty high, higher than the United States. Male expectancy of life is 84, and the female expectancy of life is between 86 and 89. And now, why? Because Canada, we have improved health services, lesser stress after retirement, and we have welfare benefits for people over 60-year-old age, security payments. And we have CPP, that is Canadian Pension Plan. We have welfare payments, and we have disability pension plan, and we have employment insurance for people who are laid off, and we have social welfare payments and many other benefits. And so Canadians believe because of this, the life expectancy is very high. I'm pretty sure in the United States or in any other countries, they might have the same thing. Now, because of all these social, economical factors, and maybe income, education, employment, community safety, and social supports can significantly affect how well and how long we live. And also, we have better health care and hygiene, healthy lifestyles, sufficient food, and improved medical care and reduced child mortality. And and then a life, we normally, when we examine, life expectancy is affected by many factors, such as employment, income, education, economic well-being, quality of the health system, and ability of people to access it, and the health behaviors, such as tobacco and excessive alcohol consumption, poor nutrition, lack of exercise. So considering all these modern factors, the social and economic factors, how do we see these teachings found in this Jataka story, or the custom followed by this Dhammapāla lineage? Bante Kusala raised hand.
Bante, so I think I spoke earlier, so I think I should let other monks speak and then maybe come back with my I had this question that, what makes you live longer, kind of a question, with Canadians, and then your other examples showing that, people have benefits. And then I just Googled, what makes you live longer? In that you find like don't smoke, sleep well, and don't have any stress. When you don't have these things, you're going to live, eat healthy and exercise regularly. So, but still, you know, athletes die. They eat healthy and they exercise regularly, and you know, there's this mystery behind behind death. I think for a joke, people say if you eat healthy, exercise regularly, drink water every day, you're going to die anyway. So
We're all going to die.
yeah.
No matter how old we are, right?
Right.
If we're born, we start to die.
But for
Yeah,
that,
it's
I raise hand. So yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, when you said about those list of things that provide good health, the things came to my mind is that even with good insurance, healthcare facilities, we tell lies. You know, we go to the doctors and tell lies, and we tell lies to our children when we want to eat, you know, sugary food with diabetes. We tell lies because we want to eat. So, but exactly, I felt with these physical needs provided for good health is a good thing, but it doesn't make sense if we do violate those moral principles. We are going to have some demerits collected in our mind, which makes a big impact of losing the quality of life, so that we might die untimely because we have been cutting off of so many good energies when emotional, you know, good things are blocked by having those unrighteous life. So which is what you brought is really good for the audience, because people are looking for long life by doing exercise, by eating good food, and they are struggling to get good health care and education. And during this winter time, people look for various avenues to increase their health. But what this Jataka story clearly suggests is really interesting to think about, because it's mainly suggesting that if we maintain a good level of peaceful mind and behavior, that is the key thing for long life. But it is questionable, because if we are born to this world with the main cause of death, according to many other discourses, you would die young. And there are many other causes that people could die. But what we should take from this Jataka story is that the mental well behavior is always good to enjoy the life right now. And when you enjoy the life right now with the wholesome thing, you would definitely live longer, in my experience. Because when I had this Jataka story with the children at the Dhamma school, the very first questions I got is, why then the Buddha's mother died as soon as she gave birth to the Prince Siddhartha? I was speechless, because how could I explain children that mothers die because of so many other reasons and so forth? And then why? Then another children asked me the question, why the Bodhisatta's son died in another Jataka story called Uraga Jataka by a snake bite. So what caused that son to die? Because they were living with the Dhamma. So I think we can make many questions out of this, but what the audience should know that the Dhamma make us happy, Dhamma make us long life. And at the end of the Jataka story, it tells that if we follow the Dhamma will protect us. Dhammo have rakkati dhammachari. One of the interesting thing I just want to bring here is that the Bodhisatta's father in the story, Dhammapāla, tells the teacher that our wives bring good children because our wives practice sila and they do not look, they behave well, and they keep their mental health and physical health. Therefore, the children are born to our wives are healthy and they have good memory. And because of the good memories, they can learn well, they can remember many things. And once they are born to our wives and our families, they are upholding those good things. So as a result of that, they live longer. So that sounds a very great thing, that the children who come to this world would be taught good things, so that they are going to live peacefully under the principle, good principle, so that there are good chances of living long life. So I think that's all I want to share now. And despite all these good facilities provided by the government or the families, we can decide how long we live, and the quality of life as well, depending on the Dhamma taught in other discourses. So that decide very well. And I think that is the interesting point in this, one of the interesting point of this Jataka story.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante Jinananda. I think you explained, you added more insights into this discussion, which are very helpful to understand with respect to having the life expectancy or longevity. And I want to bring your attention to the sutra, like Chullakama Vibhanga Sutta, where this young man is asking the Buddha, there are people who are enjoying long life, and there are people who are not enjoying the long life. They are dying young. So what is the reason behind this? And of course, we all know, Buddha said, anyone who is taking life, that person is going to have short life. But anyone who is giving life, respecting life, not destroying the life, that person is going to have a long life. And I think we have to relate this discussion to that aspect of the karma as well. But I just want to go through these the verses, maybe we can highlight the key teachings of the custom followed by this family. And then I think how relevant those customs, those spiritual, moral, social values to modern time. And Bhante Kusala, you raised your hand.
Well, Bhante, so before you go through those gathas, and we can open them up, I like to also bring, you mentioned about the Chullakama Vibhanga Sutta, and now I am linking this with the Cakkavatti Sihanada Sutta, which also speaks about people living for 80,000 years, right? This, nobody believes that this is ever possible. 80,000, like, can you imagine living like 200 years, or 300 years nowadays? It's like impossible. And the very reason why they lived that long, according to that sutra, is that they didn't know any unskillful behavior. It was never known among them. They don't know any bad way to behave. They only knew good conduct. So here we see that there's a link, like Bhante Jinananda mentioned there. There's a link between how you behave, how you think, and how it affects everybody, and as a whole, how it affects your lifespan, killing, all of that. And this, at that time, they had only 3 problems. They had desire. This was one of the problems. They had lack of food. They just needed to find food, and which means they were hunger was a problem. And the other problem was reaching that old age, which is 80,000 in this case. This was a problem too. that they reached 80,000, now they have to die. And they came to sexual maturity at the age of 500. So these people had beauty, wealth, pleasure, and strength. But over the course of time, they began behaving in various unskillful ways. And this caused the human lifespan gradually to shorten to the point where it now stands at 100 years. With human beauty, wealth, pleasure, and strength decreasing. And in the future, people's morality degrades and lifespan goes down to 10 years. People reaching sexual maturity at 5. Some people don't really know that in Buddhism we have these kind of teachings. And when COVID started taking lives, people started worrying about, now we must have come to the lowest point of our moral standards, and that may be why our parents and people at middle age or young age are dying. So this is that other sutra I wanted to link. I think Venerable Mataji has things to share.
Yeah, I think when you were speaking, Bhante Kusala, I know Bhante Premaratana, I think he disappeared. I don't know whether he's there. He was so excited to share something. Maybe later on, Mataji.
Yeah, well, there's some interesting things. Like I come from an old family in Philadelphia. Goes back to the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, goes way back. But it goes back in Europe as far as 1355 that we can trace in family history. But the interesting part about the graveyard, or the cemetery in Philadelphia, there's no women in the cemetery in Philadelphia from the early like 1700s, when that place first started, Laurel Hill Cemetery in Philadelphia, where our family has any woman that's died under 88 years old. This is kind of fascinating. There's one in there that's 103. There's 102. They're in their 90s usually. My grandmother was 98. My mother was 89, you see. And the question is, why? And this story, reflects, I really liked what Bhante was saying about this goes back, if we take it back to the Buddhist teachings, and Kusala, too, you're trying to take it back to the suttas. What you think and ponder on becomes the inclination of your mind. And, the Buddha, where you're going with your thoughts and keeping your precepts and living your life and everything comes back, it all comes back to what I tell people is the control center of everything is right here. And the Buddha was a fascinating character. You had all this meditation going on in it, with a subject and an object. And all of a sudden the Buddha shows up and he says, no. The subject is the object. We're going to do it that way. And I went, what? There's actually no object. When we get into studying the object in meditation, seriously, we find out that the object, the only reason for it being there is so that you have some place to return to continue your observation of mindfulness. If you left and started to become occupied with a hindrance, you have some reason to come back. But the object is not that important, actually was not that important to the Buddha at all when you start examining the meditation and going very, very deep into it. But the behavior of the people is very interesting, because there's another place in the text, the Chula Kama Vibhanga Sutta, okay, that one is what you do in the present time dictates what happens in the future. So there is a behavioral thing, and I see this happening. I may have mentioned to you a few weeks ago, I taught 16 nuns that were in a convent in Pune in India. By request, they needed a capsule of meditation to be taught to them before higher ordination took place. After 7 years of study, they get highly ordained trained in Rome, okay? So they had to be taught meditation. Now, during the 10 days, I only do 10-day retreats and 14-day retreats, but we're teaching you something that you can take home and keep practicing all the time. And what's important about this is when you listen to the prose in this story, it gives you all of the different items. And if you were to go through there and think about your text, you could take what's said in the section of the prose back to how gift giving is done and how this is done, how that is done. All those suttas are right there in a row in that prose. Go and look. It's very interesting to do that, okay? I won't go into that, but about age, remaining young in your mind. These people were not necessarily staying young. When you read somebody says they stayed young, what does it really mean? You meet an old person, a very elderly person who is elderly, okay, elderly and not able to communicate anymore and do anything. And then you find me and they say, okay, how old are you? I'm 72 almost, okay. And when I go into 72, what's happening? That means I'll be 9. What does that mean? That's numerology. That's all I know about it. Well, if I'm 69, that's, let's see, 9 and 6 is 15, 5 and 1 would, the 16, 6 and 1 would be 7. I'm 7 years old. Whoopee. How old are you in your mind? How old are you in your body? Come on. You see, so you look at some of the oldest people in the world live on an island off the coast of Portugal somewhere. It's called Canary Islands or something. If you go over there, the people are living into their hundreds. Well, why? Because they're happy, because they're living in the present time. There's your Buddhism again. You're living in the present time. Don't go present moment. You can't catch a moment until you're a very, very advanced meditator, okay? But present time, the bus driver can learn to just think about the present time and not the past problems biting him and not the future punishing him with worries. But if staying in the present time is how I get people to go through COVID here. Teaching them to live in the present time capsule is all you need for a calm mind, a better stomach, nice sleep, sharper thinking, better communication and focus, you see? So all of these things I'm mentioning are the Buddhist teaching. Yeah, all of it. So the other thing is that Bhante also mentioned, one of the Bhantes mentioned that the position of the people, how were they living? You have stories in Buddhism about villages that existed where all of the monks were practicing loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Now, what was the system in that town was there was no domestic violence, no fighting, no arguing, no retribution, no punishments, all arbitration, and everything was going really well. Why can't we do that today? Why can't we do that today? It's because there is no sides, because both sides are off their rockers in many places in the world. Someone said to me, I asked someone recently, if you don't like your president, why can't you elect him out? They said, well, we went past that. I said, what happened? COVID happened. Oh, I said, is that why he's still the president? He's not supposed to be the president here or whatever, the prime minister, whatever it is. He's supposed to be gone, but there's no elections because of COVID. You see, now the people are pushing for elections. All this stress. And if you let go of all of it and come back to the present time, and then if the people were taught to smile from very young and to let things go, whatever it is, never mind it. Let it go. Relax, smile, and come back to what you're doing and finish. And we'll talk about that later, you see?
Yeah.
And all of this is Buddhist training.
Yeah,
you see?
Yeah, that's interesting. You actually brought up a lot of things, the practice of teachings, and I wish people could understand, apply those teachings into their life for the longevity, to enjoy the long life. And I know Bhante Kamalasri, the most venerable Balangoda Ananda Maitreya Mahanayaka Mahatero, he lived for 104 years, something like that.
Yes, 104.
And Bhante Kamasuri, you actually met him, you had discussions with him. Did he mention anything about his longevity? Do you recall anything?
He mentioned several reasons.
Uh-huh.
The number one is not eat meat.
Ah.
Yeah. Number two, not use any drugs, alcohol, intoxication things.
Uh-huh.
And third one is he mentioned the anger.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because at the childhood he was the anger boy, the angry boy, and he got suddenly angry, but he changed that situation within the guidance of senior monks. Then he started to practice metta meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Then that is the three reasons he mentioned about his life.
So this is very interesting. Can you re-emphasize that? Okay, the first one is
Not eat
meat consumption.
Yes.
Makes you tired. Makes you tired.
And the second one?
Alcohol.
No alcohol.
No
Third
alcohol.
one?
No anger.
No anger. So no meat, no alcohol, drugs, and no anger. Okay. Okay. I know. I knew Bhante Kamasuri. Of course, I also met him several times. Those days, I think I was a teen monk, and you were a teen monk too. But then you lived there. Then I left Sri Lanka. But you met him so many times. You had personal
Until death.
until his death. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. Bhante Jinananda, you raised your hand.
If others are silent, I would take the time to speak few things about this important Dhamma that this Jataka story brings. Yeah, I think another important thing that should be added to the list is managing our eating style. Those days a lot of monks who spoke about their longevity is managing their eating and sleeping style. That is Dhamma center. You can manage all eating style and also sleeping style and other style with sensual pleasures, with so much love and excitement and greed with your life. But when you do it mindfully, it means that you have a life pattern to reduce the greed, attachment, anger, and all these negativities so that the lifespan could be increased. So my teacher lived over 90. So what he was eating at the last 10 years of his life was only healthy things, and he used to walk every day for 30 minutes, and he didn't eat at night at all. Just only water he drank in the morning, and after that glass of water, he spent 1 hour without eating anything. So that kind of things made him to confirm his Dharma-centered life very much. I think one of the interesting thing he had in his life is mindfulness. So he was mindfully doing all kinds of physical and verbal behaviors. That is the key for him to, I think, embrace his beautiful life and appreciate his life. Here I needed to add one more thing here, that is self-appreciation. The father of the Dhammapāla and the Dhammapāla himself believed their own good karma along with compassion. It is said in the story. So we have to have a kind of self-compassion. If we love ourselves, we are taking care of us first, so that then we provide that same peaceful status of life for others. So in this story, we talk about, good things as a family. But if your family members are not doing well, don't worry that you can increase the capacity of your life, the longevity of your life, just by following these practices alone. Because I found one family, my father is alcoholic and other members of the family are not doing well. But the son who was asking me the good behavior was telling me a story that how could I manage my life, because I have learned a lot about Buddhism. I cannot change my father. I cannot teach others in the family the same thing. But how could I manage my life? Then what I was asking him to do is to be mindful about their karma and also your karma, and you love yourself so that you can find love for others in the family as well. So Dhammapāla, the son and the father, had the same thing. They were not angry at all about anything. When the teacher brought the story that your son died, in normal situation, father got mad at the person who bring the message and excited and cried. But the father of the Bodhisatta answered with positive mind, with a smile, with a laugh. So when we respond to things in our life with positive mind, with mindfulness and self-love, I think that makes so much good energy in us, and that helps the physical stability as well as good health. I think we can learn these things from this story very much. And what we suggest for us as well as everybody else to, based on the mindfulness, if you look at the Satipatthana Sutta, the 4 foundation of mindfulness in the first place is for Sattanam Visuddhya, purification of being. It means purification of mind as well as purification of physical behavior, physical good health. So if we become mindful of who we are and what we should do, I think that makes us living long life.
Okay, so now that's very interesting concept too. Living mindfully would help us live long, enjoy the longevity. So we have a young monk joining us from Hollywood. He's a Hollywood monk. Bhante Sanat Vihari raised his hand. This is his first time joining this discussion. And I'm positive, Bhante Sanat Vihari, you have some interesting insights to share with us about the longevity. Oh.
Thank you, Bhante. So when I was reading this Jataka, and then I was thinking also about like the Sigalovada Sutta and the other suttas that all the venerables shared, I was looking for like a principle, like a general principle. And one of the ones that came to mind was harmony, living a harmonious life. Right? So when we look at all the suttas and this Jataka, why shouldn't we harm? Because it affects others, it affects society, it affects the community. Why shouldn't we steal? Because it affects the community. Why shouldn't we, have bad sexual misconduct? Because it affects others. And why shouldn't we lie and gossip? It affects others. Why shouldn't we get all drugged out? Because it affects others. So really what I was thinking about here was, the principle of doing that which goes in accordance with harmony, with society, to give freedom from fear, freedom from harm, freedom from being cheated, free from lying. So bringing it, I wanted to connect that to what you said, Bhante, earlier about the statistics about Canada and all those nice things. It's really nice up there. Maybe I should move over there instead of being in Hollywood.
And I said, that's why many Americans are moving to Canada.
Yes, Bhante. And, if we look at like human history, we see that human history, even to this day, there was a lot of violence and conflict and taking from others. One family would take from another, one tribe would take from another, one nation would take from another, and they would fight for resources. And if we look at the statistics, even just like up to, in the 1900s, the like murder rate was so high, even 100 years ago, the murder rate was so high. And stealing, like all these crimes were actually happening more back then. And there was more wars and more people were dying from conflict. Most young males used to die from conflict, from fighting. That was the main thing that would kill young males. But now if we look at the world today, why do we have these kind of, you know, beautiful places like Canada? It's because people are working together. They're living in harmony, right? They created rules. They decided we're going to follow these principles. And then that leads to better healthcare, better schools, better everything. But the underlying principle is we have to work together. You know, we have to make a promise to each other. We have to set up these principles of we're all going to get along and we're going to discuss it, right? Like Mataji was saying, like it in the one of the things there was about this creating this dialogue instead of like, you know, trying to punish each other or scolding each other, creating a dialogue so we can overcome all the problems. So I think, you know, nowadays, if we look at all the statistics of like the world in general, and especially like in, you know, more developed countries, we can see that people are living way better lives, longer lives, you know, especially because before so many children were dying, you know, just at birth. So many mothers were dying at birth. So many young kids were dying early from disease. So many young men were dying in their early teens and as a young man from wars and fighting and all these other kind of things. But once we started setting up all these rules and all these ways to work together, like the United Nations and the European Union and the all these other groups where we can all work together instead of tribalism, instead of individualistic thinking, then we can have, you know, a better world. Though even right now, like even in war is a terrible thing. But wars are more rare now, and there are less people dying in wars. If we look at Iraq and Afghanistan, how many US troops were lost compared to the Vietnam War and compared to World War I and World War II, the numbers are significantly smaller. You know, it's a horrible thing, but you know, there is a reduction in the numbers. And if we look at all these different data, it's because we're all trying to, you know, work together and resolve the problem at the lowest common denominator. So I think right here, Buddhism really offers this kind of like harmonious perspective, as Bhante Puniji would say, right? All the harmonious perspective. We have to have this harmonious perspective that the Buddha is offering, right? And I think that's really what we can pull from all these things instead of, you know, moralizing, because I don't, you know, I think sometimes in like the religious context, we get kind of trapped in this moralizing, like you shouldn't kill and you shouldn't steal. And, you know, to go to heaven, you have to do this. And you, if not, you go to hell. And, you know, I kind of take a different perspective and try to encourage people to work on social harmony and working together and cooperation.
Actually, you brought up a lot of points. Thank you, Bhante Sanata Vihari. I think people need to hear these words of insights, you know, from, I think the whole purpose of this discussion is to, through this discussion, we are trying to help people, you know, make a great awareness. And, you know, in Canada, let's say Canada is a typical example. We have people living in this country from every country around the world, from every culture, from all faith tradition. But here, we all are living side by side in harmony, in peace. And of course, I'm pretty sure, Bhante Sanata Vihari, you're fully aware, Canada is known for peace. You know, even Canada doesn't send troops to fight. They send the troops for the keeping mission. So I think Canadians are peace-loving nation. So if we can, like maybe the Canada, this nation is following the Dhammapāla custom, lineage kind of thing. Bhante Kusala.
Well, I'm really happy that Bhante Sanata Vihari mentioned about harmonious living. And I think he traced it to Bhante Punnaji.
Yeah.
I know I lived with Bhante Vimalaransi for 2 summers and also with Sister Kema. So Bhante Vimalaransi is really a big fan of Bhante Punnaji, and he uses harmonious all the time, especially when he teaches about the Eightfold Path. He uses the word harmonious for Samma, you know, Samma Ditti, harmonious perspective. Samma Vacha, harmonious speech. You know, this is very, I think, very nice. So to think about how Canada, Canadian people live. Also in the West, lots of animal lovers are here. And this is something that I really like to highlight, that if anyone sees that someone harming animals, throwing stones or beating them, people will be very upset. But in Sri Lanka, this is quite common that dogs are beaten. You hear them screaming, and some pets are abandoned. It happens here too, but it's just like their quality of life is so very low. And I see that, I think people's thinking and their standards have something to do with this kind of environment in these countries. So I really appreciate, being a dog lover, cat lover. I really love the fact that, in these countries, these pets are like kept like family and loved so dearly. So there is something, this is what I call development, animal love. And also in Buddha's, Jataka stories, some kings were taught, what about these animals? Do you not give them abhedana, freedom? And we need to think about their long life too. And that way people also get to live longer. I like to, go back to the Cakkavatti Sihanada Sutta, because Bhante Jinananda mentioned about mindful living. In it, there is this one place where the Buddha talks about how hatred arises among communities, especially you don't care about your mother, you don't care about your father, you don't have that same relationship between father, daughter, and these boundaries are very thin. When it comes to that low standards in living, so it's this sword interval, in which sword interval means, it's like everybody is seen as an animal in this situation. So you just fight, with, for trivial things. And swords appear in hands of people to claim their rights, to claim properties, and it becomes like a game. Having seen these animal behavior, some wise people choose to go to the forest to meditate in a cave, and they wait until this period has ended, and they come back to realize that this was our bad moral conduct that contributed to losing lives, bloodshed. And we need to now wake up. We need to make this world a kindful and mindful nation, like you always speak about. And we need to really, bring our qualities back. That way, everybody can live harmoniously for a long time. And there you will have peace, prosperity, animal love, many good conduct, good behavior. So this is to be highlighted. That's what I.
Thank you, Bhante Kusala. I know when Bhante Kusala was speaking, I think half an hour ago, Bhante Premaratana's something was triggering in his mind. He was almost about to say something, but then he disappeared. Bhante Premaratana, I will get back to you. Bhante Vansananda from Seattle raised his hand. I'm pretty sure he also has something very interesting to share with us.
Thank you, Bhante. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So in this topic, so all monks are nuns. Well said, everything. I really appreciate your sharing. And here, I wanted to add few things according to this discussion. we could understand the longevity is the very beautiful things we can gain in this life. But when we go to the exact teaching of the Buddha, we cannot expect anything, the eternal things in this life, because everything is subject to change, impermanent. Because of that, even though that we have to have the long life is a beautiful thing and it's a blessed. So to gain the long life, have a long life, I think there are few reasons we could find according to this discussion and in the Dhamma. One reason is karma. Our past karma, that could be a reason to have a long life. And another one is our mind cultivation. When we develop loving kindness, compassion, that could helpful for to live long. And another one is environment. The good, and when we have a good environment, this is very helpful for us to live long. And another one is food, what we eat, what we drink. And these are things. And another important thing is behavior. Those are the things I could catch from this discussion and the Dhammapāla-Jataka story. And especially when someone wants to have a long life, we have to think about how we gain such life. Sometimes in this very life, we have to, maybe we don't have much wholesome energies to live long. But now we could improve or cultivate such wholesome energies with us and doing good things, especially being virtuous and practicing mindfulness as well as other meditation practices. Also, the other monks mentioned about living according to the Dhamma. You may gain good energy to live a happy and long life. So this is a good thing. Another one is when you think about, sometimes it is helpful for you to understand what is the good, what is the bad. Sometimes we don't know we do many actions, maybe bodily, verbally, or mentally. We need to understand what should be the good one, what should be the bad one. So then if something is harmful either for yourself and others, it is bad. If something action is helpful for yourself but not others, it's also bad. If some action is harmful for yourself but helpful for others, it's also not good. Then we have to think about what are the good things, and if some action is helpful for yourself, it does not affect others. That means that's good. If some action could helpful for both yourself and others, is also good. If some actions helpful for others but does not affect yourself, it's also good. Such way we have to understand the things what we do. That's the way we have to cultivate, because the past karma we cannot change. The future it is yet to come. This moment we have to change. If we could change this moment in a profitable way, it will help you to have a long life.
I say, Bhante Vansananda, you beautifully presented that, we can change the future behavior if we choose to change our behavior right now. Future depends on now, right? So it's very wisely said. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to go to Bhante Pemaratana from Pittsburgh. I know previously Bhante Pemaratana, when Bhante Kusala was saying, your mouth almost...
Dying to listen to Bhante Pemaratana. I'm really dying.
I was curious.
Yeah. Thank you, Bhante. I was really enjoying this discussion, and but suddenly when I got some visitors, so I had to go off for a while.
Yeah,
I think all the important points are well discussed, well presented. I think this discussion is really entertaining and also very insightful.
Yeah.
One little thing that I like to highlight, Bhante, in this sutra, that the great Dhammapāla is saying that he's used this term like this line of family, like this line of young people do not die in this line of family. That means like a generation. So it gives us very interesting idea that when we behave virtuously and when we follow wholesomeness in our life, that is going to influence not only us but our children too. So our responsibility to be virtuous and be wholesome and kind is bigger than we think, because that's going to influence our children. So this Dhammapāla is saying that because of his parents, Dhammapāla, the great Dhammapāla's parents were virtuous and kind, and they were following precepts. So therefore, he got these genes from his parents, which has that quality to that can give him long life. And he himself was also virtuous and wholesome, that he passed that gene to his son, and then he also has the capacity for long life. So in the same way, I think so our genes, we pass our genes to our children. So it's not only a physical thing. According to this story, it looks like what we pass to our children is not simply our physical feature, but also our physical health and our our vitality, our vibrancy of the body. It is directly related to our virtuous behavior. So I think it gives us one more reason for us to be virtuous, for us to be follow the precepts, because we are going to influence our children based on our moral behavior.
And I think that's so true. Bhante Pemaratana, today I did some research into life expectancy. So one research shows a couple of factors, and the number one factor is genetics. So if parents have the good genes, and the children are going to inherit that.
Maybe about the kind gene.
Kind deed, kind genetics, genetics full of kindness, love, compassion, all the good values. And I think today's discussion was such a very meaningful and very productive discussion that we had. And those who are still watching, who are remaining with us, you are remaining with us because this is of great benefit to you. This is of great interest to you, and you're learning so much from this discussion. So I'm very, actually it's 7:30 now. We have come to the end of this discussion, and we can discuss more. I just would like to conclude today's discussion with this. My own teacher, he's still living, who gave me the novice ordination. He's now 96. So I called him. I did a video call, and so we had a pleasant discussion. And at the end, I said, my dear teacher, may you have all the blessings of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. And then he said, that's so nice, but this depends on the blessings of the karma. So I'm pretty, because whatever we discussed today, that teacher also, he did so much good. He would walk for for kilometers after kilometers. I remember when I got my first ordination, I had to go with him. I remember walking with him like 15, 20 kilometers. It was trying for me, but and he still continued doing that. But it's only now that he cannot walk that long. But he says, walking like that and eating in moderation. I said walking was a good physical exercise, and helping others, living a pure life with moral disciplines and moral precepts, and doing meditation, and all these are the key factors. And of course, my teacher is also vegetarian, and I have never seen him getting angry, and so he would continue practicing meditation. So even my high ordination teachers, Madihe Panya Siha Mahanayaka Mahatero and Ampite Sri Rahula Mahatero, they also lived pretty long life and very healthy. They also had those good qualities. And I'm pretty sure Bante Pemaratana, Bante Jinananda, Bante Vansa, Bante Kusala, Bante Sanat Vihari, and Sister Kema, your teachers, we also follow, they also living long life, right? And they also following the moral principles and all these spiritual values. That's why they are enjoying such a long life. So this was such a great discussion. I'm very grateful to all of you, and thank you for your great contribution. So, and I'm also very thankful to our friends for watching us on Facebook and YouTube Live, and thank you for joining us. So now let us conclude today's discussion by reciting the Ovada Patimokkha verses. So I would like to respectfully invite Bante Pevaratana, if possible, to recite those verses.
With respectful greetings to all the members of the Mahasangha. Sambha papasansa akarenang kusalasa upasampada sachitanta pariyodapanang etang buddhana sasanang Kanti paramang tapo titikha Nibbanang paramang vadanti buddha Nahi pambajito parupagati Samano hoti parang vihetayang tu Anupavado anupagato Patimokkhe ca sangvaro Matantang nyutta ca bhattasmin Panthan ca sayanasanang Adhichitte ca ayogo Etang buddhana sasananti.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Bante Pevaratana, for beautifully reciting those verses of the Buddha. And when you recite these verses, we feel like as if we are very closer to the Buddha mind. So thank you. And once again, I'm very grateful to all of you for your great contribution and sharing your words of wisdom with us and with all our friends. And we are going to meet again in 2 weeks' time. Until then, may you all have all the blessings of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha for your health and safety, for your long life, and happiness and peace. May Devas, celestial beings, continue to protect and guard all of you. May all blessings be with you. Okay, good night. See you in 2 weeks' time. Bye-bye.